All right, so one thing that we wanted to talk about, so you solicit the gift, you get a gift. What do you do then? You thank them. But what is the most important thing that you think that you should do?
Demonstrate the gifts being used.
Yep. And so many times that is what does not happen. We get a gift, we send a thank you note. Great, thanks. See you next year. We come back, but we don't actually say what their gift does. And I think that is probably one of the biggest mistakes that any philanthropic organization makes in making sure and spending that time to thank them. And so at a place like Hopkins, and I know Lycoming does this as well, we have policies in place that if someone makes a gift over a certain level, we will send them a letter and a visit every year, and we track it. And the reason why we do is because we all get busy and you forget. Or the next person comes along. But it's really important. Most gifts are repeat donors, and most people will give test gifts first. And if it feels good, they'll continue to give. And so, as Chip was saying before, part of our job and part of your job is you teach people what it's like to give. And so you want them to have a good experience. And as Chip said, just because someone has wealth doesn't mean they know how to give. And what you need to do is demonstrate to them that they're making a good investment in you and in your church. I know that we mentioned that a lot of you switch and you rotate. That's actually a benefit to some degree because you're a new leader that comes into place and you have a new vision. And people always want to help somebody with a clear vision succeed. So while it can be you'll lose some of that traction with people, you also get a fresh start all the time, which is something pretty good sometimes. And you also can take experiences that you saw that worked in one place that might not work in the new place, but you can try different things. And so I think it's really important to really look at that in that sense. So stewardship, in our world, it's thanking and expressing gratitude. It's a way to do it all the time. The art of science of cultivating, interacting relationships with donors for the purpose of influencing donor retention, increasing gift values, and increasing the pace of which a donor maximizes giving. This pretty much says it all. It's really important that you take the time to demonstrate how their gift is being made, to retain them, because most like we talked about yesterday, there's other organizations that are thanking them. There's other organizations that are getting them involved. And it's really important when they make a gift to you that you continue that process of helping them feel good. And one thing we talked about at this table here is, and if they don't give, you still need to make them feel good too. And that's sometimes easy to forget because you work on something, you think you're going to get it, and they say, nope, I can't do it. That's, like Chip said before, no does not mean no. And you should always think about the future of what they can do. So the way to do stewardship, the one thing as being leaders, you have a lot on your shoulders right now. You have a lot of things you have to do. With stewardship, the ways to do this is you can involve other people. You should stay in contact with people when you aren't asking for money. You should make sure that you're constantly in touch with them, which you guys are already doing on a regular basis. In education, sometimes we need to remind ourselves of that, just to make sure we're in touch in front of people. Another way is to ask people for their input. Let them know that their opinion matters as they're getting involved in your church. There's a balance between giving and actually feeling more involved. And when someone feels more involved, they will give larger gifts because they feel that they have more of an influence. Use newsletters, emails, use testimonials. A lot of times what we'll do is when we have somebody that's made a gift, we'll put them in the newsletter to thank them if they're okay with it. But one thing is it makes them feel good that we're showing what they've done and others can see, depending on the person. But then that also shows as an example to encourage others to give. So consider doing that when you do have gifts that come through. These are just some key points with stewardship that most donors are repeat donors. Naming opportunities. Sometimes people just want to have recognition. They want to have their name on something. So are there benches? Are there rooms in your rectory or in your space that you could name? It's rectory is not the right word, is it? Oh, they're all named? All right, well, they probably are. But think about ways that you can name something. We were just talking about a summer camp. And one thing is we were talking about it costs, I think, $165 a week to go. And one thing that you could do is you could ask somebody to fund students to go to that camp and call them the, Megan Howie Scholar or the Megan Howie. That makes people feel good. That makes them feel like they are making that difference in somebody's life. And so be creative about naming things. Yes?
I was just thought of this as you were talking, that even if the person doesn't want their name put out there, they might be willing to have the amount given that an anonymous donor gave this amount for this.
Yep.
Even if they don't want their name out there. And that would encourage other people.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. Donor walls. I mean, you don't want to have the whole, everything have names on everything, but we were doing a gift campaign and we were trying to get, we had our centennial, it was our anniversary of the school, and I wanted to find a way that people could give and get their name on something at Hopkins that they normally might not be able to do because, it's a minimum of $100,000 to get your name on a building. It's like 20 million, it's just too much. And so we actually did a wall, it was $10,000. That they could have their name. And to me, that was really a way, and we used that money for a scholarship, so we called them Centennial Scholars. But we raised $1.6 million, which is great, but the biggest thing that I was most excited about is I gave somebody who could only do $10,000 an opportunity to have their name on something. And that's a wall that will be there forever. And it's something that's very significant because it's the school's anniversary, and I didn't go to my bigger donors. I went to the regular people because, of course I didn't exclude the larger donors, but it was a way to really include. And so that's what you need to kind of consider and think about when you're thinking about campaigns or how you're going to raise money is how can you do something that everyone can contribute to and feel good about it. Okay.
One of my experiences is that sometimes people don't want their name on it, but they want their parents,
yes,
deceased parents, or
yes,
a child that they that is predeceased them.
Yes.
Their name on it.
Absolutely. It's a really great way to honor somebody. And not everything has to be permanent. I mean, you can do it for a few years. As long as you're transparent about what it's going to do, you could do something for a few years. And that's, right now in a lot of the big universities, there's some controversy because buildings have been named and they're taking names off of buildings. And part of that is you give the money for the building, but the maintenance of the building, I mean, on Hopkins, for instance, I found from like 110 years ago where they built the building, state of Maryland gave $275,000 for the building. This building now would be $100 million to renovate and to redo. And so what happens is you just need to think about long-term, future, and just to be honest when you're talking to people and let them know that.
The building is not going to last forever.
It's not. It's not. And I think it's okay to tell people, rooms. The rooms, you're always going to have to renovate the rooms because you're still going to have other needs, and to say, we're going to name this for 20 years. And that's okay, as long as you're upfront with it. Another thing is, and this is where it gets a little, in a parish, people give also because they like access, right? And so sometimes they want to feel like they're insiders. And so to think about doing receptions and to have something that is just for possible larger donors. And so, I mentioned this yesterday about, the masses, the large Easter and Christmas mass where, thousands of people come that you never see. Make sure that you're remembering those people that come every single week and they get some type of special treatment because they're there for you every week. I think sometimes what happens is, at least in my experience, Catholics, they do things differently, but sometimes they're so into making sure those thousands of people that are in the room, they're like, oh, let me get that, let me try to say something special so they'll come back again, that they forget the regular people. And so think about those types of activities when you're working with donors. We have a lot of events, and if someone does give a gift, have a luncheon for them. Thank them. If it's a large enough gift, do something special and tell them what they're doing. And so Chip and I, when we were preparing for this, he was talking about some of the missions that you all do. And the places where you'll send people, and that people will fund that. Well, take pictures, or have people on the mission take pictures, and ask the person that's actually funded to go to write a letter. Let them thank the people for going. Number one, it'll make the person that's going feel good because they're actually having the opportunity to thank someone. And then also the person receiving it actually sees what they're doing. So for people who give scholarships at Hopkins or people that do professorships, as Chip said, we actually don't bring them into the hiring process. We'll tell them and we'll bring them into a lunch so they can meet people, but we call it a dedication, where we actually do this big event where the faculty member speaks, the donor speaks, and it's a really celebratory event. But what we do every year is that professor writes a letter and gives an update of the research or the teaching that they do. And so if you have projects like that that are funding people, because people really want to fund people usually, and if you're able to do that and tell that story and connect that with what they're supporting, you'll have a lot better chance of building a bigger campaign and a bigger future for giving. So presentations, publications. We were talking at this table about the notion of people want privacy, and some people don't feel comfortable about giving. And so we actually, in the university side, we used to do honor rolls. And you'll see that done sometimes. My opinion, and it'll be interesting to hear what Chip says because we haven't talked, I think they're good, but they're a lot of work and a lot of places that you can make mistakes. And do you use them?
Not so much in print. You can do it on the web, and then you can make changes live. But no, they don't play the same role that they used to.
They don't play. So the one thing that has happened is traditionally people wanted to kind of be in the club and to do those things. We're seeing that they don't really, if you see if you've noticed, there used to be a lot of private dining clubs. They're still in New York a lot, but in the outside areas, they're not as popular as they used to be. People like them, but they're not like they used to be. And I think that's what an honor roll can denote sometimes. So, here are some just different things for you to think about as you're working with people. And, think about, let them have church leaders, let them meet with the church leadership. Have a council that your insiders that you talk to. Let them feel that they're part of the decision-making process. Let them have some influence, but be careful, because don't do quid pro quo. I didn't say that. Don't let them, never get yourself in that situation, because it's a dangerous space for anyone. And that is the one thing that I will warn you about the younger donors, as we were talking about the levels. And I'm looking at Chip just to see if he agrees. The younger donors want to sometimes, and this is a trend that's happening, they want to be very involved in the gift. So when you do that, just make sure that, like for instance, if someone gives you money and they say it's unrestricted and you can use anything that you want and you report on it every year, I always switch the purpose of what that money goes towards every year, because I never want them to feel that they are funding that projector right there and that they own that projector. Because if they're truly giving unrestricted, it's important that you tell that story in your thinking process. We were talking about learning about needs and services, publications, videos. So, we were talking about videos last night and how much we use videos. And to be honest, videos are pretty expensive to do if you do them edited correctly. But there's something, like when we were talking about the mission, with these iPhones now and with the technology, even if you just get a clip of somebody that it's supporting saying, thank you, look what I was able to do. Or if they support something with students or children, say it's Sunday school or something, if you could just tape a class and send it to somebody or bring it and show them on an iPad, it really can be powerful. And that's what we actually do now. We do like little snippets. It doesn't have to be professional, but just to kind of show them what they're doing or what your money is doing. And also have fun with some of the ways that you steward people. It doesn't have to be so serious. It can be, do like a Christmas card or a thing where like we'll do for our students, we've had different times where we have students and they'll hold up a sign that says thank you. And we send that out to our donors every year. I do gifts for my larger donors every year. This year we did, they're engineers, so they're technical, and they don't like, traditionally. We did like a Rubik's Cube thing on a 3D printer, and we sent that to them and just said this was made by a student. Just creative little touches that you can do. A prayer book or a special thing that you can actually, write, thank you so much for your service, things like that. And then, just to make sure that they're surprised, that they always feel that you are valuing them. So with stewardship is the volunteer engagement. So when we're talking about work, wisdom, wealth, these are the things is you always should plan. You always should make sure that you're planning your interactions. So that's why we're talking about making that list. Thinking about things that you want to do throughout the year. You always want to recruit new people. And so while it's easy to have that close group and that close-knit group that you've probably been used to, never forget the new parishioners that are coming in. Never forget the new members of your community that want to be involved. It's really important that you ask them to be involved, to educate. So one of the ways I think that you can get over people's comfort about the knowledge of giving is just to talk about the finances a little bit more and some of your struggles and what you need, and to help educate them on the process and also educate them what it feels like to make a gift. To involve, thanks, and then in the end, it's the impact. So it's all about an impact that they can make with you and the ways that they can contribute to society through your church.